Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Right Opinion, the home of a twat with too much free time. And boy oh boy, is this a video I've been waiting to do for a while. In fact, I had originally planned to do this as some 500k subscriber special, but alas, time flies and so many events occurred at that time that it was impossible to find a place for this video. But now everything's opened up a tiny bit more. I'm feeling more comfortable to take the time to talk about, well, a lot. At one point, I'd also planned to make this a New Year's kind of thing, kind of resolution sort of vibe. But knowing how long these videos take, I think there's reasonable chance that it's closer to next year by the time this video's out. That is, of course, a hilarious joke, though knowing how long it takes on my videos, you may well have believed it. Obviously, this is a minor installment in the TRO catalogue, but I still think it's a necessary one. As implied in the title, there will be a Q&A that will hopefully provide you with a little more insight on the man behind the avatar. I also have a fair few announcements to make, but first of all, I would love to spend some time thanking those who have helped me on this rather chaotic journey. The main party who has probably played the most prominent part in this advancement are, of course, the editors. Now, as you probably know, I have a fair few editors, so I'll be leaving them all in the pinned comment. However, I do want to give a few special mentions to individuals who have gone above and beyond the Call of Duty in the past few months in particular. It's hard to know exactly who to start with, but I'd like to mention Peter Day. He has worked around the clock with some of the toughest edits and post-edits. When other people haven't been quite able to follow through, he has been on call every time, no exception. The dude is a superhuman, and I can't understate that. We're going to be working on a new channel project together ourselves, and I can't wait to get that off the ground. I'd also like to give thanks to anyone who has helped post-edit on a regular basis, most notably to Lanuski and Mullinax. If you've ever heard the Danganronpa music in the background, then I can tell you that was the product of Mullinax's magic. They're both also really talented editors on their own terms with incredibly distinctive styles. I love what they do, and all three of these beautiful people have been working with me for over a year, and I hope that we can continue working through this one. I'd also like to give a mention to people who have consistently delivered high-quality edits on a regular basis. A large majority of my editors have, and we've all worked on improving throughout the year. It's good to slowly work to push the bar higher, and I hope I can match their quality. I also want to give a big shout out to my Discord server, the admins, and the head admin and furry, Durumisus. Many of you probably don't know that when I was starting off on YouTube, I ran Colossal's Crazy server for a bit, and it was an absolute nightmare. Discord has obviously made it easier to manage certain elements since then, but it's still a challenge, and when I was working on it, it was always tough to make a decision that I felt would represent the Discord owner in question. So if you see him, tell him he does an alright job and that he's a furry. He loves to be told that he's a furry, guys. I'd also like to thank my Patreons for their support. It gives me a bit more security when talking about topics that may be sensitive. Obviously, I'm always paying money to others for their work on my videos, and so their contributions are a lifeline. I don't really plug my Patreon too much. I only mention it right at the end of the videos, and a lot of people tend to click off before that point. So the fact that some actively seek it out and involve themselves like that does mean a lot to me. I want to give a special mention to my $50 Patreons, Some Hullabaloo, Nico Deschamps, Caroline, Cole P. Hennessy, and Hypercube. They are all doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much, guys. Some Hullabaloo has been supporting for over a year now, which I just think is incredible. And I'd also like to give an extra special mention to Brandon, Stanton, Christopher Carras, and Be More Cool J, my $100 Patreons. Brandon, who once again has been donating for over a year now. I actually have never spoken to him, but if you are watching from afar, know that your generosity does not go unnoticed. I want to thank all my friends, YouTube and non-YouTube. You need both to maintain some semblance of sanity. It's been really cool building public bonds with fantastic creators like Primink and Jay Aubrey, which is the only time I plan on pronouncing his name correctly. It will be Jawbury for eternity. I will be starting a podcast with our good friend John soon, and I'll leave a link in the pinned comment if you want to go and subscribe to it. I know a lot of people were anticipating a podcast with Primink too, and as much as I want that, we both really do because our banter is uncontested. Unfortunately, he's got a few other issues to deal with first, but I'm confident we'll make it a real thing eventually. Beyond that, I have a load of fellow creators to thank: IHE, Colossal, anyone who got me started and promoted my work. And on top of that, I want to thank everyone I've had the pleasure of meeting at events, VidCon, Insomnia. All of them are really enlightening, and a reminder that at the end of the day, we're all human, even if we're behind a screen most of the time. Any viewers I've met at those events too, it's really cool. I actually do want to do more meetups, but I find them a bit daunting. I had a couple experiences that put me off, but overall, they've been really positive, the ones that I have had. So yeah, I've mentioned a lot of people. However, most importantly, I have you guys to thank. I want to thank you for your continued support, and I hope I can represent that in the best way possible. It's admittedly been an interesting year, and I'll go into more detail about that soon, but it's good to have some people who will pull you through regardless. Without stroking your ego too much, it's good to have an audience who are pretty constructive in how they respond, how they reach out, and even how they deliver criticism. I'm not perfect, and we'll probably talk about that more in the Q&A section, but someone messaged me saying that they really appreciated that in spite of my rather pessimistic outlook, I try and see the best in people. I don't think that would be possible without people around me who take a similar philosophy. I am truly grateful for that. For now, I think it's best we enter the Q&A section because some of you people really want to find out more about me, to be honest. Well, there's a lot to discuss, so I suggest we get into it. Alright, so before we get into this, I'll make it clear that if you haven't watched my last Q&A, I don't tend to go from question to question. I tend to try and give overarching answers that hopefully satisfy general points of interest. Though of course I'll show some examples of questions so it doesn't look like I'm conducting an interview on myself. I'd also stress that there are some things that I may not talk about again because I already spoke about them in my previous Q&A, and I don't want to be merely repeating myself, though I probably will. There's still a lot to talk about though. A lot, because last time I made one of these, I wasn't too detailed. Today I'll be showing a bit more and maybe throwing a little shade. So I hope you do enjoy that. I guess one of the questions that I receive a lot is why I started. And that's a complex story, which if asked before, I probably didn't go into too much depth. I probably said something like, oh, I was bored, which isn't entirely true. So let's do that now. We go back to 2015, I believe. I decided to take a gap year mainly because I wasn't quite confident that I knew exactly what I wanted to do at university. Initially, I had applied for script writing, but I began to have cold feet that it would be a very difficult industry to infiltrate. So instead of taking any of the offers I had received, I decided to hang back and make some new applications. After a bit of rumination, I found a course at a prestigious university that suited my interests and I decided to apply for that. I also had various backup offers, but once I set my mind on a goal, it's hard to turn it onto anything else. Nonetheless, it was a painful process. There are a few stages and it ends in a final interview stage at the actual college. So obviously I had to submit my application and then I had to take this test, which I vigorously revised for with one of my close friends. Shout out to Cheyenne, you're a legend. That went well and then I was invited to the university. Now at this point, I probably had a false sense of security because I'm quite good at interviews generally speaking, or at least I thought I was. And when I was there, I had such an incredible time. They make it an incredible time. They hold these events, make you feel part of their family. Looking back on it, they kind of led me on. Because of that, I began to envision my future a bit too keenly. I had an idea in my mind of where I wanted to be. I had my mind on the university experience, and I should have managed my expectations better because it didn't work out. And I think when I found out was one of the first times that I just felt this emotional black hole swallowing me. When I received the test results, which you receive after their verdict for some reason, because they were pretty high, I decided to make an inquiry about what they felt I could have done better. And after just a month, they gave me this email. The assessing tutors thought you gave a good interview, but unfortunately, given the competition for places, they felt there were stronger candidates. Oh, really? I thought the tutors were purposely giving places to weaker candidates. I felt insulted. I'd waited almost a month to basically be told, you lost because other people beat you. This was 2016, by the way. I should probably clarify that. We are now into 2016. And this kind of flipped my mentality on its head at the time, because I've always sought out the idea that I do need to improve, right the wrongs. And yet, I gave this so much of my all and received such a vague answer regarding something I cared about so much. I felt like I didn't know what to do better, and neither did they. And I didn't like that feeling. And because of that, I felt like no matter how much I gave, I would never be good enough in other people's eyes or my own eyes. I was having a rough time in life with general. I felt like a failure. I was an emotional mess who probably flipped out a few times because plans in my head had fallen apart. I had a good family provide me security, but I didn't have much money, and I always wanted to do something that could change my life. Other career paths were cool, but they were also pretty risky. YouTube seemed like that medium that could work out with a small initial investment and the idea you could make gradual progress while continuing to support yourself. A few of my friends were doing YouTube at the time as well. Ollie, Ram, Isaac, you know who you are. And they seemed to be having a good time, so I thought it'd be an interesting thing to throw myself into. I think at that point I needed something to take my mind away from various insecurities, and I also wanted to prove to myself that I was good enough. I'm a perfectionist, and for multiple reasons that, I'm probably going to go into eventually, my life had felt less than perfect. I was inspired by creators such as I Hate Everything, Odosa Buckley, and music critics such as Todd in the Shadows. I based the persona on a rather British stereotype due to my demeanor, and of course the accent, which yes, it is real. I thought it was good branding at least. Obviously, when I started, I made quite different content to what I do today. A lot of the first videos focused on political commentary, quite casual but stinging criticism of the then incumbent Conservative Party and many of their policies. Politics was something that I was highly passionate about at the time, and therefore I thought maybe mixing the genre of politics with short-form commentary could work out. With the help from my friends Isaac, also now known as Viri, and Jack, I managed to put out a decent amount of content. However, I wasn't particularly invested in the channel at the time. I just wanted to make some videos where I chatted about stuff. I still had a lot of friends and we partook in various activities. For example, we even went to Rome on the back of a few £100 that each of us had, and that was fun. There are vlogs of that trip online still. I'll leave them in the pinned comment if you want to see some footage of me prior to this fun little hobby. For the first few months, I didn't really see YouTube beyond that hobby that would maybe blow up if I was fortunate. That all changed when I started university, which is strange because I was expecting university to be the end of my YouTube career. I went to Amsterdam to keep it vague, and it didn't go well. It wasn't good on the basis that it was already a disappointing result in my head. And this was also in the wake of the very significant Brexit vote, and a fair few people at the college had taken it very personally. Now, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about Britain's withdrawal from the European Union, but if you have watched my old videos, in spite of my generally left political persuasion, you'll know that I'm a firm critic of the European Union, much of their procedure and structure. Go back half a century and a lot of Eurosceptics were on the left, but by 2016 it was clearly associated with right-wing ideology, and I think a lot of people jumped to conclusions about my own views, and people were emotional. That sort of stuff happens. I'm not mad about it, but the consequences were not great. People saw a few critical Facebook posts and it spiraled. I tried to shake it off at the start of the year by really involving myself in various activities, but I think I gave up after a month and just receded onto the online world. Probably one of the most defining experiences was in the second week. I remember I had a few new friends around to watch a film on my TV, and I went to grab my laundry. I always did my laundry really late at night because I hated taking my laundry there and finding all the washing machines occupied. Some other British freshman who had clearly been drinking too much with his friends ended up swearing at me in the street, and although I returned verbal fire, which was foolish, I felt very shaken. And following that, I felt always some distance from other students. I'm not going to make myself out to be some kind of victim, but knowing you're being subjected to differing levels of judgment from people and never knowing what they think about you and knowing that people are talking about you behind your back is isolating. At that point, I became more involved with the online world again. I'd work on Colossus Crazy's Discord server, I'd work on more videos. I think I aimed to get 3 a week at some point. A lot of them are videos that frankly I don't really remember, nor do I really want to remember, though I might have a more cynical memory than that which is warranted. However, as you know, that's not the content that I was making today. Let's talk about that then and how I got here. So that's the question. How did I end up making what I do today from my very humble beginnings and the evolution that has occurred? Because, for a long time, I have been making short-form videos relating to political topics. So I guess we have to tackle 2 more things. Why did I make my videos longer, and why do I not cover political topics anymore? Let's talk about my political evolution first, because my political journey was much like an arc. I spoke about this in my previous Q&A, but once again, we have more time for the TRO law than previous, so since I've left university, I've felt less motivation to conceal my feelings and the drama that occurred. The first couple years had pushed me in various directions politically. The exposure to rather hostile individuals in Amsterdam definitely made me bitter to a cause that I previously identified with, and it had made me more outspoken in a way. It was a late-stage rebellious period in my mind, and I didn't stay at Amsterdam, which is very important. That's a fun little story, actually. In February 2017, I suffered from probably one of the worst illnesses that I'd ever had in my life. They never actually diagnosed it, but my temperature was soaring, I had jaundice, it was really nasty stuff. I lost a month of class and I even went home for treatment. Because of this, I missed a significant number of courses, 5 if I recall. Now, for 4 of the courses, the tutors were highly accommodating and allowed me to partake in any assessments that I'd missed. However, there was this one class of which I didn't have the best experience anyway. The tutor wasn't fond of my outspoken nature and the feeling was mutual. I had missed the last week of lessons, which of course wouldn't normally be a big deal, but because it was an intensive course, she insisted that I had to retake the whole 23 lessons, an idea that I did not find palatable considering I'd been there for 19 lessons. So I appealed to the relevant academic board who decided that actually they wanted to support the tutor's decision. I assumed at first they were ill-informed and sent them all the relevant documentation, doctor's assessments, contributions. I even met with them, I offered compromises, even offering to retake the part of the course that I had missed. Even though I'd done the written assessment, the exam, and worked on part of the group project, they insisted that I had to do the whole thing again. In the end, I took it to the Higher Appeals Board, and although I won the case against them on that level, I had attended a tribunal where I had to represent myself against my own academic board. And that was surreal, and it probably has shaped why I have very little trust in authority. It was undoubtedly the most stressful experience of my life, and at the time it led to a lot of specific resentment to what the stereotype of what the typical liberal arts represented, leading to a lot of videos that probably served as the antithesis to the philosophy of their attitude. In hindsight, that wasn't the right way to deal with it, and the lesson that I should have learned was much broader than that. You can't rely on others to do the right thing for you. But in 2017, I was definitely at my most political, and it was not in the right way. I was ideologically channeling frustrations against an issue that was beyond ideology, which is why a lot of those videos just aren't up anymore. After this mess, I made a conscious decision to move to a different university. Now, I really didn't want to do this on principle because I didn't want to lose the academic progress that I made throughout that year. But fortunately, the University of Groningen, also in the Netherlands, offered a straight transfer that allowed me to start in my second year. And that was a very different environment, which completely dissipated many of my frustrations that I had at the previous university. Now, let me make it clear, this wasn't without its problems. I had some issues when I started, but they weren't social. I got along with people fine, even though at that point I had dedicated a significant amount of time to my YouTube grind. I got drunk on many Saturday nights, made a fair few friends. Big shout out to Sush, you mad lad, if you're watching this. It took a few months, probably until January, February, but my opinion on these stereotypes in my head really began to soften, and I tried to diversify my content a little. I remember making a critical video on White Boy by Tom McDonald, and that just got absolutely swarmed with a mix of McDonald fans and actual alt-writers who, for some reason, weren't the nicest. You know, they say there's always one video where you gotta have a negative like to dislike ratio. That was it. At that point, I had a policy of replying to nearly every comment that was made on my videos, but I have to admit my patience began to wither after that one. I realized that my brand of what I viewed as agenda-driven activism probably wasn't the healthiest for me, and that it often pushed me to one side of the debate when really I wanted to think myself as quite an open-minded person. I think what I realized is that I was still politically naive to a lot of ideas that I had where I stood, and there was this part of me that I wanted to figure that out, and that a YouTube channel where you post all your thoughts with some degree of confidence and conviction probably wasn't the best if you change your mind in a few years. However, I still wanted to make content that could involve me looking at situations, applying various levels of logic and reasoning, something that would challenge me. And at the time, a lot of my friends were involved in commentary. In spite of my political narratives, I'd never really fit into any political clique, and no one had ever really invited me, which was fine, but because of that, the only reason that I made those videos was because of my own personal interest, my own attachment. I didn't have an obligation to anyone else. At around that time, early 2018, I also attended an Insomnia Gaming Festival, which was the first event that I attended as a YouTuber, and it inspired me to take the leap into commentary. However, I was aware of one thing, that there were a lot of commentators, and I'd made commentary videos in the past, and they hadn't done much. The The most successful video I had made at that point was a video called Matt Hoss Could Win, and that seemed more like a fluke than anything else. So I realized that I had to do something unique. I had to leave an impact with my content, so I took a look at my resources and what I had going for me. I had relatively strong community standing, a persistent determination, some experience in writing, and a strong relationship with some very talented editors. So I thought, well, let's put it all together, make longer videos with a more personal style, something that will set me apart in what I'm doing and yet maintain a decent upload schedule. And so I began making videos in that style. This wasn't without its problems, and it still isn't. There are obviously going to be some inconsistencies in the visuals, and even though there is consistency, some people just can't get into that style of video. And I can't blame people if they don't like that approach. For me though, what I think is most important is that feeling of progress, that sentiment that I hope with regards to quality, my videos are moving forward. Obviously, that's subjective to an extent, but if you go back to my early videos in this format and compare them with the ones that I'm doing today, I hope that there is some visible difference, and hopefully one that is for the better. But, as said, it hasn't been without its challenges. Let's talk about that a bit more. One of the most significant burning questions that I've received from people is about the mental effect that such content has had on me. And it's a good question. One that is kind of difficult to respond to, but I'll do my best. It's not been great. No one said this stuff would be easy, and I embrace the challenge, but it's a large burden. And I guess this ties into the questions that I receive about maintaining some emotional distance from the topics. I've even had a few people ask me in the past if I'm a sociopath, which I'm definitely not, but I understand why someone may think that. To enter the topics with the level of emotional distance that I often do is difficult. I think trying to untie your personal feelings from these issues is something that many find too much of a challenge to do themselves. And it's a challenge that I don't always successfully traverse myself, but I guess I was set up for it in a way. When I was growing up, I was an emotional person, extremely emotional. I was very volatile, and my moods often swung from one pole to the other. I've always been very perceptive, so when I felt someone was being unfair, unreasonable, or vindictive, I was prone to being quite abruptly hostile. However, I came to realize that many people wouldn't often come around to your point of view through such an attitude, and that often you had to use other more restrained techniques. When I was around 12, I had anger management therapy, and this definitely improved me. And although I was still prone to making emotionally based and often rash decisions, in the next few years, I continued to work on myself. Life was pretty good through a majority of my teenage years, but I think my gap year combined with my first year of university really fractured my mentality. There were a lot of times where I probably got too emotionally invested in my own expectations, which led to disappointment. And I think that sort of continuous cycle wears you down. And eventually, my body just said no to heavy emotional investment and excitement and looking forward to things. And this isn't to say I don't still feel things, because I do, but I often get this very weird dynamic where I experience more physical emotional reactions than what I feel inside. For example, sometimes I'll do karaoke, and I know it makes me very nervous, and although I won't feel nervous in my head, I'll experience the most terrible tremors. It feels like there's some emotional disconnect between how I feel and how my head tells me to feel. And this, I think, has allowed me to look at drama from a relatively distant standpoint while still integrating some emotionally based reasoning. It's a blessing and a curse. However, with that said, when I started this new style and it began obtaining success, I definitely still experienced an excitement for the first 8 months or so. When a video performed well, I got a rush from what I was experiencing. However, after a while, that began to wear off. Maybe due to the fact that you gradually become desensitized to these things after they happen on a regular basis, but also likely because I was aware that with more people watching you, there's a greater responsibility to deliver content that represents the brand that a lot of you guys watch me for. As you grow your channel, there's more to lose on a mistake. It's a lot of pressure to deliver that content all the time, and on occasion I failed to make it to a standard that I'll be happy with and it'll play on my mind. I'll go into more detail regarding that soon, but every upload is a lot of pressure. That thought that there's been some glitch that you didn't pick up, some comment that you made being read a different way, some misunderstanding that you've made. And those are valid concerns because I've made all of those mistakes in my videos. Am I paranoid? Probably, but when you're talking about drama, you're never too far away from it. On top of that, it's a lot to emotionally restrain yourself when there's parts of me encouraging to absolutely let loose on people who come at you. There's still a part of me that wants to respond to everyone and everything. But once you reach a certain point, you realize that there's a lot of realism you have to apply. I think one of the other things is that when a lot of people become popular, they often adapt a different mindset, because when you have so much of your life at the public's disposal, you kind of have to take a different approach to it. For me, though, I feel that it's a necessity that my content requires grounding from the eyes of the audience, which means I can never really become particularly invested in my own success, because I worry that it would probably inflate my ego to the point where I lose touch with the perspectives that I want to relay in my content. Just look at the Slazzo video. These are all things that cause a strong amount of pressure, which brings me to another very popular question that people ask me. How do these serious topics affect my mental state? And to be honest, it's difficult to describe, because for me, although the details obviously cause a level of repulsion, there's a part of me that is just determined to push through and make sure that the content is delivered regardless of what I find. I guess I do feel an element that takes its toll, but I also want to talk about these things, the really sensitive topics sometimes, such as etiquette, where no one had really said anything the way that I wanted to. I guess my philosophy has always been what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and although that's not exactly true, and I'll be more than happy to tell you that, I do find that experience grants one an element of mental immunity, although I'm not sure what the cost of that has been. One of my former friends, who I even collaborated with, has managed to become popular off the Minecraft resurgence, and I couldn't be happier for him. But part of me feels like I could have made this easier for myself. I haven't chosen the easy path. My child's development has not been without its flaws. Some people reach out to me with these problems, some I agree with and pledge to work on, others I disagree with and accept it's probably a difference of opinion that separates us. I think probably my greatest challenge is making sure I provide an analysis that separates observation from my own personal opinion. Even though my videos come out after a while, I still have to be considerate of the facts around the case changing and keep an open mind and be sympathetic to possible conditions that may yield it. I have biases. I will probably always have biases. I am human, but I can still do better. And I need to avoid biases like those which state that just because circumstance dictates something is likely doesn't mean it's certain, and I need to emphasize that, but not necessarily compromise on the criticism that I want to deliver. An example of where I failed on that was the Pro Jared video, which I enlisted a while back but never really got round to talking about why. And although I have my criticisms, I was far too harsh and channeled too many personal frustrations about responses rather than being sympathetic to possible explanations and circumstances. I also missed details that would have altered my perspective, and that's not good enough. I am sorry about that. A lot of people asked if I'd make a new version of the video, but in the end, I just didn't feel happy trying to redo it. I have very conflicted feelings on the whole situation and his video. It wouldn't feel right to me picking through the topic with a level of distance and superiority, knowing that I could have done better myself. I didn't feel comfortable putting myself in that position at that point. So I think sometimes you have to take the L, move on, and take it as a learning experience. Talking about moving on, we'll slide over to a new topic. Another question that I received a lot is regarding the process that I make my videos with. How do I end up releasing these videos on a regular basis? It reminded me of a comment left on my video that an editor sent me once, which basically said, so all you do is write an essay? Listen, mate, I wish it was that easy. Let's talk about how I make my videos. Firstly, it's picking a topic. I have a Google Doc which lists all the possible topics that I could undertake. It's a long list. A lot of people ask me if I run out of topics, and I can definitely say that's not really a problem with me. With all these communities on YouTube, there's seldom a time when there isn't something to talk about. I like to think that my style can always bring something new, even if it's a heavily visited topic. I think there's a lot of flexibility in what I can cover, fortunately, and that provides me with a broader range of situations to cover. So once I've picked a topic, I'll typically begin some research, and at that point, a lot of people ask me how I do that. Well, I don't do anything particularly special. I use Google, YouTube, Twitter, Advanced Search, Web Archive, and if there are any search engines specific to a certain site, then obviously I will use them too. I have a few secret formulas that I keep to myself, but overall, it's nothing magical. A lot of searching, lots of clicking, one link that will lead to another link, and then maybe another link. I think it's just a case of tenacity and working through fatigue that you might experience. The research at first, though, is not too heavy. I do not do it all at once. Often I'll work in research as I do my scripts. It's like a learning process for me as much as it is with my audience. So you can see the evolution of my ideas and opinions throughout the video. Some people ask if my opinions evolve too much during the research of a topic, and generally they don't, mainly because I avoid assuming too much. I guess the one that I kind of changed my opinion on was Oxhorn. I remember when I first looked into that, I hit a few videos that didn't really convince me, and I even watched Oxhorn's response video, and I think around 3 videos in, when someone actually showed some evidence, that my mind was swayed to be slightly more skeptical of how he handled himself. Generally speaking, though, I don't find my expectations too easily subverted. Obviously, when the James Charles case went down, I was swayed one way and then swayed back the other. But that was all kind of happening in real time, so it's hard to exactly compare it to other stories. When I'm writing, as said, there's an element of spontaneity to it. A lot of people ask how I approach scripting, and for me, I always say it is written quite like an essay, but I use a lot of rhetorical devices that would typically be absent from a written piece. I often imagine how I would say it in person. I may even repeat myself out loud when reading through the script to make sure it flows relatively naturally. Obviously, these things aren't completely perfect, but generally, I think they flow quite smoothly with my approach. Once I'm happy with the script, I will go into the recording studio, which is right now the cloakroom in my house, though I am working on another room to hopefully make that a bit easier. I take a stool, put a load of cushions so I'm at a good angle with my microphone on the desk, and I get going. It's not the most convenient, but we make it work. I know that's why my audio can be a tad inconsistent, and some people with sensitive ears will pick it up. So once I have a more solid studio, hopefully that'll ease the issue. I often record it in one sitting, though because I'm rather pedantic, I will often make changes to these scripts because I'm never satisfied. I'll go back and redo lines and send them through to the editors with caveats. I use strike through for text that I want to remove and bold text for the script that I want to add. After the audio is cut, I send it to the editors for visuals. I get a lot of questions about the hiring of editors, but really it's just people contacting me seeing it, and then initiating a discussion. I have an idea of what I like in my head, but I allow diversity. I think it could make the video more colorful, even if it's not to everyone's tastes. I will sometimes split edits tactically, maybe if I feel one editor is more suited to one part. I typically split my audios into 5 to 7 minute segments, so there's some way that it can be followed. My editors tend to do their own thing with some guidance. They also pick up various character stills, which, if you are an artist, I've decided to create a crediting list for these videos, so please contact me if your stills are being used in these videos. However, the work doesn't end there. First, I need to write up a reference list for the editors. I learned this fairly early on in my career, that this was necessary, or else you're not going to see what you envision to be on the screen. And I like showing relevant footage for the topics that I discuss. That's also at the reference sheet that you guys see if you've ever looked for them in the pinned comment. I used to put them directly in the pinned comment, but I had situations where I was posting them and I guess the comment was too long or YouTube didn't like it, so in the end I just put them in another document and left the link in the pinned comment. After references, and provided I don't make too many changes, I will receive people's versions. At that point, I'll have another editor compile these versions and then send it over to me. Now, the first draft often isn't perfect. I've either forgotten to add something, and editors misinterpreted a direction. Either us could have made mistakes. So what happens is that either I'll have an editor for post make the correction, or I'll have the original editor make the correction themselves. Sometimes an editor will want to make the change to their own part for the sake of continuity. Sometimes they're rather indifferent. Sometimes we've had communication issues on this, but overall I like to think we do all right. I'm really proud of the progress and how many editors have managed to keep up as the style has evolved. And I think that's something to celebrate. The fewest times we've gone over a video is twice, but sometimes we've gone over it 6 or 7 times, and then comes release. Obviously, I've got uploads. Normally, I try and get the video review for monetization pre-upload. It's very important due to the resources that I'm already sinking into these videos, and I often don't trust YouTube to keep it monetized post-release. There was a pretty rough patch last year with monetization around the time of the Matt Watson drama, but since then, it's been okay. I don't tend to do too much with the metadata. I used to do more, but in hindsight, I don't think it has a huge stake in the performance of videos. I put the video intro into the description sometimes. Seems like a nice little touch, and it might help out with the search algorithm. We'll try and get a nice thumbnail. Almost all my thumbnails have come from the man himself, Starfo, although Grade A Under A Part 2 was done by my main man, Lanuski. And around 3 weeks after we began, we upload. and I anxiously anticipate that hopefully I haven't missed any glaring issues. One of the times where that annoyingly happened was my Austin Jones video, although a piece I'm obviously very proud of. Around the 35-minute mark, you can hear this very high-pitched background noise, which continues until around the 40-minute mark if I recall correctly. That was pretty frustrating, so to have to proof watch all these videos multiple times can be a task, and sometimes my friends will watch it for me. Obviously there are some changes that they cannot advise on, but they'll typically pick up if there are any glitches. The behavior of uploads is strange. I'm a bit pedantic and therefore that leads to indecision over things like titles, which you may have seen me change in the past mid-upload, and I do apologize if anyone has been confused into thinking I've uploaded a new video. Honestly, I sometimes feel slightly uncertain about stuff. But we made it this far, and I think that'll lead me to my next part. A lot of people ask me what my plans are, how a lot of my previous plans have proceeded, and I have talked about my personal ideas in previous videos, so I appreciate people keeping me focused on them. Obviously, I spoke about the progress with the podcast and so on, but there's a load of other stuff. I heard a fair few questions about music, and although I've probably mentioned this before, my favorite artists are Elton John, Queen, Robbie Williams, ELO, that sort of vibe. I'm into a large majority of genres, providing it's not too loud or aggressive or lacking a structure that I myself enjoy, which is a pretty conventional one. Apologies to all you metalheads. Nonetheless, that's not the crux of the question, because as some of you may know, I'm a trained vocalist. In fact, back in an older video, the legendary TikTok Predator, I wanted to do a music clip.
Whatever happened to the love that we do say? Whatever happened to the time I could be the one you could depend? Whatever happened to the time we used to spend together? I thought this was forever. Now it's wait till the end.
Because I didn't want to be claimed, I decided that I would use one of my own songs, which is Until the End by J-Dance. Though I think on Spotify it's called Waiting for the End. I made the song when I was 16, I've always had a bit of an ear for melodies, and my other song, Off That One Morning Sun, is quite popular with the people I've shared it with. I'm definitely planning on doing more music this year, but I probably need more time and resources to dedicate to that hustle. The final goal is an album, but I'd like to feel like I have creative control, and that's not something that I quite have yet. I'd love to maybe drop a little demo and then use it to maybe build a platform off. When I started, the initial plan was to use this as a platform to hopefully launch some of my other media-oriented careers. But at the same time, I'm not sure at which point I should attempt to launch it. I'm actually working on a few rap tracks with an editor and friend by the name of Cold. If you follow my Instagram, you may have heard a clip from one of them. It's a fun thing to do. And though I'm not expecting to have any great success, it would be pretty cool. Regarding other media, I have a load of film ideas. I recently started a document where I write them all down. One of the things that I've always wanted to do is to screenwrite and direct a film. As mentioned earlier, I had considered a degree in it at one point, but thought it was too risky. I don't have too much formal training, but I do like to think that I would be in touch with human conflicts that could drive my plots and dialogue, though I'm not sure if that's enough for such a challenge. I would really like to consider it at one point, but for now, I guess I'll just leave it on the back burner. I did make a parody movie with my friends. Maybe you guys will see it one day.
You think this is just a game? Well, yes.
A truly classic clip. My ultimate goal is creative media, I cannot lie. But you also got to be realistic sometimes. You can't just waltz in and declare yourself the next Laurence Olivier. You have to prove your worth in such a cutthroat industry, so I don't hold out hope. Any success there will be a pleasant surprise. Relating to this channel, obviously I hope I can be more ambitious, maybe try and integrate a sense of self into some of my videos. There are also some burning issues that have been on my mind relating to YouTube that I want to talk about. However, I feel like a face cam character break would be a good way to do them. Back when H3 did their YouTube call-out videos. It's a shame they don't do them anymore. It's not like people have fewer bones to pick with YouTube, and even other transpiring situations that I don't feel comfortable with my current format would be good to talk about too. However, I don't want to commit to too much because it is quite a nerve-wracking thought for me. I also get a lot of political questions, whether I'm going to go back into politics, and although I addressed this in my previous Q&A, I guess I'm prepared to talk about it briefly here. I have considered trying political content again. Not on this channel, but maybe starting up another channel where I do more live footage content talking about politics, maybe integrated with some creative ideas that would allow me to try out some of my cinematic tendencies. However, as a lot of people have noted, it's a really toxic environment, and I'm not sure I'm mentally ready to do something like that. Politically, there are no creators out there that fully represent how I feel. I'm not right-wing. I like a lot of the leftist guys, and that's how I identify. But some of the communities seriously concern me with their strange drive for ideological purity. And I'll be honest, I'm not pure, I'm not perfect, and I'm not out here to let angry people affect my political views. I'm not gonna have what I believe in be based on tone policing. But if I ever did politics again, I doubt I would try and be part of a greater political community. I'm not here to tell others how to feel or how to handle their grievances with a broken system, but I've just never had the personal ability to be that vitriolic to people with differing opinions within reason. And I feel I'd be dead by 25 if I took that mentality. I might be anyway, but I at least gotta try and take care of myself. As for other channels, yeah, I have a few projects in the mixer. I'm setting up a Twitch channel, and that would be pretty swell. I might have a highlights channel. As said, when I see some of my friends having such a good time, I feel like I should try and get in on this as well. Although obviously I'll be doing my own thing. I'm also setting up some side projects, lower pressure, less dramatic things, maybe even some very light entertainment. I don't expect it to affect my upload schedule. I can work quite efficiently where I need to, and to be honest, I think the chaos is dying down for the start of the year, and I'm prepared to take it on. If you hear my voice on another channel, don't be fazed that I'm doing something that you might not expect me to do. Then there's merch. I receive a few questions about that. I am doing merch soon. I've been beta testing some products. I'm going to be releasing this really nice twat mug, which reveals itself when heated. That's one thing that I actually actively like, which is a rarity. I also have this white text on black hoodie, which reads "Too much free time" for all you people out there who feel the vibe. The other thing that I'm trying to do a tad more are sponsorships, as I'm still rather cagey on YouTube's monetization policy and the fact that they could change tomorrow. There's never a feeling of security in anything that you earn, but the whole drama with BetterHelp really switched me off, and since then I've only done 2 sponsorships. The latter was obviously the Raid one, which was great fun because they let me in the internet historian take the piss, but I want to do some sponsorships where I can go in and say, this brand is actually really good. However, on top of that, I actually want to use sponsor slots as a way to platform other creators with the assurance of giving them a cut of the money made through that as well. It'll give them some space to show off their creative abilities and sell themselves, as well as the product. So although it's going to take me a while to probably sort this out, that's another idea that's been playing on my mind. I also have a few other things I want to talk about too, and some other casual questions that I'll be happy to respond to. So let's go there right now. It's time to clean up some of the questions here and there that I wasn't sure quite how to fit in. A fairly regular question has been about topics. Obviously, I explained how I pick them and my process, but I do get questions about these sorts of topics. I want to keep this channel's main focus on YouTube topics. I will probably push the boat out here and there. I have a plan for collab where I talk about a TV show, for example, but there'll be more treats of sorts. And they still talk about similar dynamics. I may make another channel where I occasionally post videos about less YouTube-related topics. There has been one very highly requested topic that I don't really want to cover on this channel, but it has my attention given certain details which have piqued my interest. I do feel my channel works for a certain type of video, and I'm still coming to grips with which ones work best. A few times I spoke about predators and their behavior, and since then I've often received messages from people about others doing some very terrible things, often criminal, and asking me if I would expose them, and often that stuff makes me very nervous, and I typically suggest that it's referred to criminal authorities first. It's why I've become a lot more tentative when people offer to send me evidence privately. I take preference to talking about what's out there already right now. Some people ask me about my branding and what I consider myself to be, and I don't like to make too many comments because although it's a cliche, I like to be myself and let people interpret what they think of me. Whether that means they think I'm a commentator, an entertainer, a philosopher, an investigator, or a dickhead, so be it. I don't run any specific algorithm in my head for how I create my content. Obviously, I have methods, but I never really think about what I can do and what specific reaction it may provoke. But I guess that brings me to my next point about advice that I would give to people, and I never really say too much generally speaking, because the formula will always differ depending on the person. But I guess the best thing that I would say to a creator is to ask yourself, why would a viewer want to watch your content as opposed to other creators on the platform? And I think that's a good question because it was the one detail I often overlooked when making my earlier content. I never left an impact. When I ask that question, I don't mean it to discourage anyone or play on their insecurities, but more to stimulate them to think about how they can innovate their brand and carve out their own niche. And I think that's my other point. Try not to be dissuaded by the fact that some people won't enjoy what you're doing. Everyone has different tastes. Try not to take it too personally, even if they try and make it personal. A lot of questions about dating and a few people asking me out, calling me cute, which I'm very flattered by. I think that's one of the things about YouTube life. It has definitely made it harder for dating. I've had 2 formal dates in the last year. They were both nice, but in the end it just became impractical when I'm still so restless. There are a lot of online ships, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I catch feelings, but it's complicated. I'm a person with very high walls, and I'm unsure how involved with YouTube I'd want my spouse to be. It's lonely. And I'm lonely, but you can't force these things. I also have a lot of identity questions that I've never really got the chance to think about because my life has been so hectic, and I want to resolve some of them before I can commit to someone else who may fall in love with someone I don't feel I really am. A lot of people ask me what my type is, and I don't like to say too much, but I like people who I describe as energetic introverts. There's an element of reservation, but a shade of optimism too. I think I need that balance in my life. I think I need someone stable to provide some security and ease my paranoia. My celebrity crush would be Tom Holland, I suppose, so if you want a general idea of what I'm into appearance-wise, well, there it is, but there's flexibility on those fronts. Some people ask what I do to try and relax. Emphasis on the try there. I like sports. I play some squash to mainly maintain fitness. I'd like to do more football or soccer, as you may call it. In fact, I think I'm pretty good in a wing-back position. However, I suffer from these nerve problems in my arms which make it more difficult to participate in such activities. Really bad pins and needles, and no one knows exactly what to do about them, although I've had a couple appointments here and there and attempts to alleviate it. I obviously enjoy music, and I spoke about that. I also enjoy cinema. You guys probably know my favorite movie is Hot Fuzz, but if you're more interested in following my film taste, you can check out my Letterboxd. I like TV shows. I'm currently watching Fargo and Better Call Saul with my family, both pretty epic. I like them. I also enjoy quizzing. For people who know me, I have a bit of an obsession with the acquisition of information, and that can be seen in pub quizzes. I would really like to go on a game show, so if there are any game show executives watching this video, hey, hit me up. I have applied a fair few times. The final goal is to win Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity, but a boy can dream, eh? As for YouTube, the creators that I watch Todd in the Shadows, Billboard Breakdown by Spectrum Pulse, I Hate Everything, Internet Historian, Pyrocynical, Mr. GG, obviously the boys, Primink, Jay Aubrey, Average, Pixel, all those beautiful lads. I could go on. If there's a topic that captures my interest, then I'll probably watch the video, providing I don't actually dislike the creator's content. An interesting question is about who I really want to collaborate with, and that's a difficult one because I can collaborate with a lot of people who I haven't yet that are pretty obvious, and I could just say, Primink, and obviously you guys would know that completely. So I guess try and throw a curveball in there. One person who I think would be cool is Pyrocynical. He's always been really pleasant, treats me like an individual, remembers details that I don't remember telling him, so that would be good. I haven't really had much contact though, as he's wise enough to stay off social media. A lot of people have asked me about alternative career paths if YouTube packed up tomorrow, what I'd do, and I think that's a hard question. I'd really like to do politics again. I'm very interested in local politics. I've recently rejoined my local Liberal Democrat Party because I feel like there are still a lot of local issues that matter to me. I walk down the street and the town is just so depressing, and I feel like there's so much more that can be done. But I also still don't know if I belong with them. Creative arts, of course, who knows what would happen there. I always worry that my status as a YouTube commentator would prevent me from being accepted in other places, but I think maybe that's a bit more of my paranoia. It's tiring stuff being this eccentric. I'm not sure if there are too many other questions that I want to respond to now. Obviously gotta save some for my next Q&A. I'll score some quick fire points. My favorite color is red. My favorite animals are probably dogs. I'd love to dye my hair silvery white sometimes. Thank you, Franny. I'd marry them all and maybe kill them afterwards. I actually love Mario Kart and I will beat you at it. You are never allowed out of the basement, probably Asda. Bees are good. I am hydrated, and no, I have not heard about Raid Shadow Legends. Please tell me more.
Really?
No.
Oh.
Oh, and my favorite video? Well, I guess it could be this one. It's refreshing and different. I know I can't do them every day, but it allowed me to talk about things that are close to me and things that have been playing on my mind. Hopefully you learned a bit too. But if you discount this one, probably Austin Jones, in spite of the annoying glitch. Thank you guys for watching. I'm The Right Opinion, and I'll see you in the next one.